Camille Sterling brought another man to our third anniversary dinner. She sat there radiant in the red dress I'd bought her last month, introducing him as her new boyfriend. Buyers, some mysterious billionaire she'd been seeing behind my back. The candlelight flickered across her face as she laughed at his jokes, her fingers intertwined with his across the white tablecloth of Bellmont's most expensive restaurant. She had no idea she was flaunting her betrayal right in front of me, completely oblivious to the fact that this mysterious billionaire was actually Theron Veyric, my own business partner for the past 5 years. The same man who'd been sitting in my office just that morning, discussing quarterly projections and expansion plans. The same man who knew every detail about my relationship with Camille, who'd listened to me plan this very anniversary dinner, who'd even suggested I propose tonight. As I watched them toast to their new beginning, my heart turned to stone. 2 people I trusted most in the world had been playing me for a fool, and they were about to learn that some secrets have a way of exploding at the worst possible moment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I never imagined that our third anniversary would end with me discovering 2 betrayals in one evening. Camille Sterling had been acting differently for weeks. Secretive phone calls, mysterious shopping trips, that glow that comes from new romance. I attributed it to anniversary excitement, maybe even engagement anticipation. How wrong I was. The evening started at Bellmont's finest restaurant, Oblivious, where I'd made reservations months in advance. The same corner table where we'd shared our first official date 3 years ago, overlooking the city's glittering skyline. I'd spent weeks planning every detail, from the vintage champagne to the custom playlist they'd agreed to play softly in the background. In my jacket pocket sat a small velvet box, containing the ring I'd spent 6 months saving for. Camille arrived 15 minutes late, which wasn't unusual, but she wasn't alone. That was very unusual. "Daniel," she said, her voice carrying a nervous excitement I'd never heard before. "I need to talk to you about something important." The man beside her was impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Tall, confident, with the kind of polished presence that screamed old money. He extended his hand with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You must be Daniel. I've heard so much about you." That voice, that familiar voice that had been discussing marketing strategies and profit margins with me just that morning in my office at Wild & Associates Digital Marketing. The same voice that had congratulated me on landing the Morrison account. The same voice that had asked about my anniversary plans, suggesting I really make it special for Camille. Theron Veyric, my business partner of 5 years, my closest friend. The man who'd helped me build our company from a 2-person startup in my apartment to a thriving agency with 30 employees. "Theron," I managed, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Camille's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "You 2 know each other. We're business partners," Theron said smoothly, settling into the chair across from me, as if this were a perfectly normal situation. "Daniel and I co-own Wild & Associates. Small world, isn't it?" The way he said it, casual and amused, made my stomach turn. This wasn't coincidence. This was orchestrated. Camille's face went through a series of micro-expressions: confusion, realization, then something that might have been embarrassment or fear. But she recovered quickly, laughing in that bright way she did when she was nervous. "Well, this is awkward," she said, reaching for Theron's hand across the table. "I guess there's no easy way to say this, Daniel. Theron and I have been seeing each other for the past 2 months. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." The restaurant seemed to fade around the edges, the soft jazz music becoming a distant buzz. 2 months, while I'd been planning our anniversary, saving for a ring, talking to Theron about proposing, they'd been conducting their affair right under my nose. "I know this is hard," Camille continued, her thumb stroking Theron's knuckles in a gesture that was intimately familiar. "But we didn't plan for this to happen. It just did. Sometimes you meet someone, and you know they're meant to change your life." Theron nodded sagely, playing his role perfectly. "Love has its own timeline, Daniel. I hope you can understand." I studied my business partner's face, searching for any sign of guilt or discomfort. Instead, I found only that same confident expression he wore during client presentations. This was a performance, and he was enjoying every minute of it. "How did you 2 meet?" I asked, proud that my voice remained steady. Camille brightened, clearly relieved that I seemed to be taking this well. "It was the most romantic thing. I was at that new gallery downtown, looking at the Rothschild exhibition, and this incredibly charming man struck up a conversation about contemporary art. We talked for hours. I remembered that day. Camille had come home glowing, talking about how inspiring the artwork was, how she'd spent the entire afternoon, lost in conversation with this fascinating stranger, who understood art the way she did. I'd been happy she'd found something that brought her such joy. Theron has such sophisticated taste, she continued, gazing at him with obvious adoration. He collects original pieces, travels to private showings in Europe. He's opened my eyes to a whole world I never knew existed. Everything clicked into place. The sudden interest in expensive art books, the new designer handbags she claimed were good investments, the way she'd started pronouncing certain words with affected sophistication. Theron had been grooming her, molding her into his ideal companion, using his wealth and connections to dazzle her. And what about us, Camille? I asked. What about our 3 years together? She had the grace to look somewhat uncomfortable. Daniel, you're a wonderful person. You really are, but we want different things. You're content with your quiet life, your routines. I need someone who can challenge me, who can show me possibilities I've never imagined. Someone with money. That's not fair, she snapped, though her cheeks flushed pink. It's not about money, it's about ambition, about vision. Theron has plans, dreams. He's going places. I glanced at Theron, who was watching our exchange with barely concealed amusement. He knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't just about stealing my girlfriend. This was about proving something, about showing me that he could take anything he wanted from me, even the woman I loved. The waiter approached our table, clearly sensing the tension, but professionally maintaining his composure. Would you care to hear tonight's specials? Actually, Theron said, signaling for the wine list, we're celebrating tonight. Bring us your finest champagne, Dom Perignon, if you have it. Celebrating, I repeated. Camille's smile was radiant. Theron is taking me to Paris next week. The month-long trip to see the real art world, meet actual collectors and gallery owners. It's the opportunity of a lifetime. A month in Paris. While I struggled to afford a nice anniversary dinner, my business partner was casually dropping what had to be $50,000 on a romantic getaway. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. Much of Theron's disposable income came from our shared business, the company I'd poured my heart into building. That sounds incredible, I said, meaning every word. It did sound incredible, and that's what made it so devastating. I could never compete with private jets and European art tours. I could never offer Camille the lifestyle that Theron could provide with a casual wave of his black American Express card. The champagne arrived, and Theron made a show of tasting it, nodding approvingly at the sommelier. He poured 3 glasses, raising his in a toast. To new beginnings, he said, his eyes locked on mine, with unmistakable challenge. Camille raised her glass eagerly. To new beginnings. I lifted mine slowly, the weight of the moment settling over me like a heavy coat. 3 years of love, trust and shared dreams, reduced to a toast celebrating its destruction. As the bubbles rose in my glass, I made a decision that would change everything. I knew something they didn't, something that would turn this celebration into a catastrophe. But for now, I would play along, let them enjoy their moment of triumph. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people reveal exactly who they really are. The champagne tasted like betrayal, but I kept drinking. Across from me, Camille and Theron were lost in their own private world, sharing inside jokes and meaningful glances while I sat there like a third wheel at my own anniversary dinner. The ring box in my pocket felt heavier with each passing minute. You know what the funny thing is? Camille said, already slightly flushed from the Dom Perignon. I was so nervous about tonight. I thought you might suspect something, Daniel. You've always been so perceptive. Theron chuckled, refilling her glass with practiced ease. You worry too much, sweetheart. Daniel's a good man. He understands that sometimes life takes unexpected turns. The casual endearment hit me like a physical blow. Sweetheart, the same word I'd whispered to her countless mornings. The same word that had been exclusively ours for 3 years. Now it rolled off Theron's tongue with possessive familiarity. I have to admit, I said, forcing myself to maintain eye contact with my business partner. This is quite a surprise. I had no idea you were even interested in the art scene. Theron. Something flickered in his eyes, perhaps surprised that I was engaging rather than storming out. He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. There's a lot about me you don't know, partner. I've always kept my personal interests separate from business. Apparently so. Camille seemed oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. Theron is being modest. He's incredibly knowledgeable about contemporary artists. He knew Banksy before he became famous, bought several pieces when they were practically unknown. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting. I remember you mentioning once that you thought Banksy was overrated commercial trash. Theron's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. People's tastes evolve, Daniel. What matters is recognizing value when you see it. The double meaning wasn't lost on either of us. He was talking about Camille, claiming her like one of his prized acquisitions. Speaking of value, I said, reaching into my jacket pocket, I actually brought something special tonight. Both of them watched as I pulled out the small velvet box. Camille's eyes widened in shock, while Theron's jaw tensed almost imperceptibly. Daniel, no, Camille whispered, her face draining of color. Relax, I said, with a smile that felt like broken glass. It's not what you think. I opened the box to reveal the engagement ring. A classic solitaire diamond, nothing extravagant, but chosen with love. I was going to propose tonight. Funny how things work out. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Other diners continued their conversations around us, oblivious to the drama unfolding at table 12. It's beautiful, Camille said quietly, and for a moment I heard genuine sadness in her voice. Daniel, I'm so sorry. If I had known, you would have what? Broken up with me first before starting your affair. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was past caring about maintaining politeness. Theron leaned forward, his voice low and measured. Daniel, I understand you're upset, but there's no need to make this more difficult than it already is. Difficult for who? You seem to be enjoying yourself quite thoroughly. That's enough. Theron's voice carried the same authority he used in board meetings. Camille has made her choice. Be a gentleman about it. The audacity was breathtaking. My business partner, who had systematically seduced my girlfriend behind my back, was lecturing me about being a gentleman. You're right, I said, snapping the ring box closed and putting it away. She has made her choice. Tell me, Camille, what exactly did Theron tell you about himself? Besides his extensive art collection and expensive taste, she glanced uncertainly between us. What do you mean? I mean, did he mention that he's married? The wine glass slipped from Camille's fingers, though she caught it before it could shatter on the table. Red wine splashed across the white tablecloth like blood. What? She breathed. Theron's calm facade cracked for the first time that evening. Daniel, oh, didn't that come up during your romantic gallery talks? Theron's been married to Victoria for 8 years. She's currently in Switzerland, visiting her sick mother, which explains why he's had so much free time lately. Camille turned to stare at Theron, her face cycling through disbelief, hurt, and growing anger. Is that true? It's complicated, Theron said smoothly, though I could see sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Victoria and I have been separated for months. We're getting divorced. That's interesting, I continued, enjoying the way his composure was unraveling. Because Victoria called the office yesterday, asking if you wanted her to extend her trip. She seemed very concerned about missing your mother's birthday party next week. You know, the one she's been planning for months. The color drained from Theron's face. Camille sat frozen, her lipstick-stained wineglass trembling in her grip. You're lying, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my messages. Here's Victoria's text from yesterday. Please tell Theron I found the perfect gift for his mother in Geneva. Can't wait to surprise her next weekend. Hardly sounds like a woman going through a divorce. Camille set down her glass with deliberate precision. You told me you were single. Camille, let me explain. You let me believe I was starting fresh with someone available. Someone honest. Her voice was rising, attracting glances from nearby tables. Theron reached for her hand, but she pulled away sharply. It's not what you think. My marriage has been over in everything but paperwork for years. Then why didn't you mention her? Why not tell me you were separated if it was so innocent? He had no answer for that, At least none that wouldn't make him look worse. I signaled the waiter for the check. You know what, Camille? I think I understand why you were attracted to Theron. You said you wanted someone with ambition, someone who could show you possibilities you'd never imagine. Well, he's certainly shown you something, what it feels like to be the other woman. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. As she walked quickly toward the restaurant's entrance, Theron and I sat alone at the table for the first time since this nightmare began. You bastard, he said quietly. You couldn't just let it go. Let what go? You stealing my girlfriend, or you lying to her about being married? His mask slipped completely then, revealing the cold calculation underneath. You think this is about Camille? This is about you never knowing your place. You've always thought we were equal partners, but we both know who brings the real value to this company. Is that what this is about? Some twisted power play? Camille deserves better than a small-town dreamer who thinks running a marketing agency makes him important. She deserves someone who can actually provide for her. I laughed, though there was no humor in it. With your wife's money, you mean? Because last I checked, Victoria's trust fund is what allowed you to invest in our company in the first place. Theron's face went rigid. This was information he'd shared with me in confidence during our early partnership, back when we were friends and not adversaries. Don't, he warned. What? Don't mention that your entire sophisticated lifestyle is funded by daddy-in-law's pharmaceutical fortune. That without Victoria's family money, you'd be just another middle management drone trying to impress women with leased cars and fake Rolex watches. The waiter approached with the check, clearly uncomfortable with the tension radiating from our table. Theron grabbed it without looking, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled out his black card, the one connected to the joint account he shared with his unknowing wife. This isn't over, he said as he signed the receipt. No, I agreed, it's not, because tomorrow morning, we have a very interesting conversation ahead of us about the future of Wild & Associates. His head snapped up. You can't be serious, dead serious. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. I think our investors would be very interested to know how you've been conducting yourself. As I stood to leave, I could see Camille through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, pacing on the sidewalk with her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling her sister, or her best friend, someone who could help her process the fact that her fairy tale romance had just exploded in spectacular fashion. I walked past Theron without another word, leaving him alone at our anniversary table, with 2 empty champagne glasses, and the ruins of his carefully constructed deception. Outside, the cool evening air hit my face like a blessing. Camille looked up as I emerged, her eyes red-rimmed but blazing with anger. How long have you known? She asked. About Victoria. Always. About you too. I suspected for weeks, but tonight was the first confirmation. She nodded slowly, wrapping her arms around herself despite the warm evening. I feel like such an idiot. You're not an idiot, Camille. You're trusting. There's a difference. Is there? Because right now it feels like the same thing. We stood there in uncomfortable silence, 3 years of history hanging between us like a ghost. Finally she looked up at me with something that might have been regret. For what it's worth, Daniel, I never meant for it to happen like this. I thought I was falling in love with someone who could offer me more than you could. And now? She laughed bitterly. Now I realize I was falling in love with a lie, and I destroyed something real in the process. As she walked away into the city night, I realized that tomorrow would bring a whole new set of challenges. Theron wouldn't go quietly, and our business partnership was about to become a very expensive war. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m., but I arrived at the Wild & Associates offices at 7:30, needing time to prepare for what would likely be the most important presentation of my professional life. Our company occupied the entire 15th floor of the Meridian Tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of downtown Ashton Bay. It was the kind of space that projected success, the kind Theron had insisted we needed to attract serious clients. I'd spent the night in my office, going through 5 years of financial records, partnership agreements, and client contracts. By dawn I had built an ironclad case that would either destroy Theron or destroy me in the process. Theron arrived at 9:15, impeccably dressed as always in a navy Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. He walked into my office without knocking, closing the door behind him with deliberate calm. "Daniel," he said, settling into the leather chair across from my desk as if we were about to discuss quarterly projections. "I think we need to have a conversation before this meeting. I think we said everything we needed to say last night. Did we?" He leaned forward, his expression serious but not apologetic. "Because I've been thinking about your threat, and I'm wondering if you've really thought this through." I looked up from the documents spread across my desk. "Enlighten me." "You're angry. I get it. But destroying our partnership over a woman seems short-sighted, don't you think? Especially when that woman has made her feelings quite clear." The casual cruelty of the comment was breathtaking. But I kept my expression neutral. "This isn't about Camille anymore, Theron. This is about trust, about the fact that you've been lying to everyone. Your wife, your mistress, your business partner. I've never lied about anything related to our company. Haven't you?" I opened the top file folder and slid a document across the desk. "Remember the Morrison account? The one you closed single-handedly last month, earning yourself a $50,000 commission bonus." He glanced at the paper, his confidence flickering slightly. "What about it?" "According to this email thread, which our IT department was happy to retrieve from the server, you told Morrison Industries that you were the senior partner and primary creative director at Wild & Associates. You also mentioned that your junior associates, that would be me, handled the day-to-day administrative tasks, while you focused on high-level strategy." Theron's jaw tightened. Morrison needed to feel confident in our leadership structure. "By being told that the co-founder and actual creative director of the company was your subordinate, Daniel. There's more." I slid another document across the desk. "The Hartwell Group contract from February. Notice how you signed as senior partner and listed my title as associate creative director, even though our partnership agreement clearly states we have equal authority." His polished veneer was beginning to crack. "Those are just titles, Daniel. Semantics. Are they? Because the Hartwell Group's contract specifically states that all major decisions require approval from the senior partner. That's you, according to this document, which means I legally have no authority over a client I personally brought in and managed for 6 months." I had his full attention now. Theron was smart enough to see where this was heading. "And then there's this." I opened the third folder, expense reports from the last 2 years. Very interesting reading. His face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "The Paris trip you're planning with Camille, the one that's supposedly your personal vacation. According to these expense reports, you've categorized it as a business development trip to meet with potential European clients. That makes it tax deductible for the company, doesn't it?" Silence. "The art collection you've been bragging about, half of those pieces were purchased with company funds and categorized as office decor and client entertainment materials. Funny though, because they're all hanging in your home, not our office." "Daniel, you need to be very careful about what you're accusing me of." "I'm not accusing you of anything, Theron. I'm stating facts. Facts that will be very interesting to our board of investors, the IRS, and probably your wife's divorce attorney, when she finds out you've been embezzling marital assets to fund your affairs." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window with his hands clenched behind his back. "What do you want?" "I want you to resign, today, before the board meeting." "That's not going to happen." "Then I guess we'll let the board decide, along with the authorities." Theron spun around, his composure finally cracking completely. "You have no idea what you're doing. You think you can run this company without me. You think our clients will stay with some nobody from Millbrook who got lucky with a few decent campaigns?" There it was. The contempt he'd been hiding for 5 years. The belief that he was the sophisticated city professional slumming it with a small-town partner, who should be grateful for the association. "Actually," I said, opening my laptop, "I've already spoken with our major clients. Turns out most of them had no idea we were partners. They all thought they were working with Daniel Wild's company, and that you were just a very expensive account manager." His face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, rage, and finally something approaching panic. "The Morrison account wants to stay with us, by the way. So does Hartwell Group." They were actually relieved to learn they'd be dealing directly with the creative genius behind their campaigns instead of going through intermediaries. "You're bluffing." I turned the laptop around to show him my email inbox. Dozens of messages from clients expressing support and confirming their intention to maintain their contracts with Wild & Associates under my sole leadership. The board meeting starts in 30 minutes, I said, checking my watch. You can resign with dignity and walk away with your reputation mostly intact, or you can fight this and lose everything. Your choice. Theron was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city below. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold and measured. You think you've won something here, Daniel, but all you've done is shown your true colors. You're petty, vindictive, and small. Camille was right to leave you. Maybe she was, but at least she knows the truth about both of us now. The truth? He laughed bitterly. The truth is that you're so threatened by anyone with real ambition that you'll destroy 5 years of partnership over wounded pride. The truth is that you never deserved her, and you certainly don't deserve this company. If that's how you feel, then your resignation should be a relief. A knock on my office door interrupted us. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Wilde, the board members are here for the meeting. I looked at Theron expectantly. Last chance. He straightened his tie, smoothed his hair, and gave me a smile that was all sharp edges. See you in the boardroom, partner. As he walked out, I gathered my evidence folders and prepared for battle. Through my office window, I could see Camille sitting in her car in the parking garage, watching the building. She'd texted me this morning, asking if she could be there for the meeting. Not to support anyone in particular, but because she needed to see how this story ended. I couldn't blame her. After last night, we were all invested in learning who Theron Veyric really was beneath the expensive suits and practiced charm. The boardroom was filled with 5 investors, our company attorney, and the independent arbitrator we'd hired to oversee the proceedings. Theron entered with his own lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman, who looked like she charged $1,000 an hour just to breathe in your direction. Gentlemen, said Margaret Chen, our lead investor, I understand we have some serious allegations to discuss today. I stood, opened my first folder, and began the presentation that would either vindicate me or end my career. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 5 years, I've discovered a pattern of fraud, embezzlement, and contract manipulation that threatens the very foundation of this company. Theron's lawyer immediately objected, but I continued, laying out each piece of evidence methodically: bank records, altered contracts, falsified expense reports, client testimonials confirming that they believed they were working with my company exclusively. With each revelation, I watched Theron's confident facade crumble a little more. By the time I finished, the room was dead silent, except for the soft whir of the air conditioning. Mr. Veyric, Margaret Chen said finally, would you like to respond to these allegations? Theron stood slowly, and for a moment I thought he might actually try to fight. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I hereby resign from Wilde & Associates, effective immediately, he said, placing his letter on the conference table. I wish the company continued success. He walked out without another word, his expensive lawyer hurrying after him with her briefcase clutched protectively to her chest. Through the boardroom's windows, I watched as Theron emerged from the building and approached Camille's car. They talked for several minutes before she rolled up her window and drove away, leaving him standing alone in the parking garage. Well, said Margaret Chen, I think that concludes today's business. Congratulations, Mr. Wilde. Wilde & Associates is now entirely yours. As the board members filed out, congratulating me and discussing the transition process, I felt oddly empty. I'd won, but victory tasted like ash in my mouth. My phone buzzed with a text from Camille. Thank you for showing me who he really was, and I'm sorry for who I became in the process. I watched from my office window as Theron got into his BMW and drove away, probably heading home to explain to Victoria why her husband's business partnership had just imploded along with his secret affair. Tomorrow I would start rebuilding the company, my reputation, and maybe eventually my ability to trust someone enough to love them. But tonight, I was going to order pizza, drink a beer, and celebrate the fact that sometimes the truth really does set you free. 3 weeks after Theron's resignation, I discovered that winning isn't always what you think it will be. Wilde & Associates was thriving under my sole leadership. Our client base had actually expanded, and the company's reputation was stronger than ever. Yet something felt fundamentally wrong with my victory. The revelation came through an unexpected source. Victoria Veyric. She appeared in my office on a Tuesday morning, without an appointment, dressed in an elegant black suit that spoke of old money and quiet power. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, and her green eyes held an intelligence that reminded me why Theron had married her in the first place. "Mr. Wilde," she said, settling gracefully into the chair Theron had occupied during our last confrontation. "I believe we need to have a conversation about my husband. Ex-husband, I assume. Soon to be, yes. But that's not why I'm here." She opened her Hermes purse and withdrew a thick folder. "I'm here because of this." The documents she spread across my desk were financial records, but not the kind I'd expected. These were personal bank statements, investment portfolios, and property deeds, all bearing Theron's signature. "I don't understand," I said, though a cold dread was beginning to form in my stomach. "My husband has been systematically moving our assets into offshore accounts for the past 6 months. Victoria explained, her voice steady, despite the devastation she was describing. "The art collection he bragged about to your girlfriend, purchased with money stolen from our joint accounts. The European trips, funded by liquidating my grandmother's securities portfolio." I stared at the papers, pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. "He was planning to leave you. He was planning to leave everyone. You, me, Camille, the company. He's been building an escape plan for months." She pulled out another document. "This is a lease agreement for a penthouse in Monaco, signed 2 months ago. And this is a bank statement, showing a transfer of $2.7 million to a Swiss account last week." The numbers made me dizzy. Where did he get that kind of money? Victoria's smile was bitter. "From me, primarily. But also from the company. Those expense reports you discovered, they were just the tip of the iceberg." She showed me more evidence: falsified invoices from shell companies, padded client billings where Theron pocketed the difference, even a forged loan document, claiming the company owed him a $500,000 consulting fee. "He's been embezzling from Wilde and Associates for years," Victoria continued. "Much more sophisticated than what you caught. He's stolen nearly $800,000 from your business accounts." The room seemed to spin. My great victory, my moral triumph over Theron's corruption, had been built on incomplete information. He hadn't just been lying about his marriage or manipulating contracts. He'd been systematically looting both his personal and professional relationships to fund his planned escape. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Victoria's composure cracked slightly, revealing the pain underneath her polished exterior. "Because Theron Veyric destroyed my marriage, your partnership, and Camille's trust. But he also made one crucial mistake. He underestimated the women in his life." She leaned forward, her green eyes blazing with determination. "I have evidence that could send him to prison for 20 years, but I need your help to make sure he doesn't disappear to Monaco before the authorities can act." As I looked at Victoria's evidence, I realized that my war with Theron was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And this time the stakes were much higher than a business partnership or a broken heart. The room seemed to spin. My great victory, my moral triumph over Theron's corruption, had been built on incomplete information. He hadn't just been lying about his marriage or manipulating contracts. He'd been systematically looting both his personal and professional relationships to fund his planned escape. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Victoria's composure cracked slightly, revealing the pain underneath her polished exterior. "Because Theron Veyric destroyed my marriage, your partnership, and Camille's trust, but he also made one crucial mistake. He underestimated the women in his life." She leaned forward, her green eyes blazing with determination. "I have evidence that could send him to prison for 20 years, but I need your help to make sure he doesn't disappear to Monaco before the authorities can act." As I looked at Victoria's evidence, I realized that my war with Theron was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning, and this time the stakes were much higher than a business partnership or a broken heart. "What do you need me to do?" The trap was set for Friday evening at the Grandview Marina, where Theron kept his yacht, the same vessel he planned to sail to international waters before catching his flight to Monaco. Victoria had texted him, claiming she wanted to discuss their divorce settlement privately, away from lawyers and complications. I waited in the shadows between 2 sailboats, wearing a wire provided by Detective Sarah Martinez of the Financial Crimes Unit. Victoria stood on the dock, elegant and composed,
despite knowing her marriage was ending, and her husband was a criminal. Theron arrived precisely at sunset, carrying a leather briefcase, and moving with the confident stride of a man who believed he'd outsmarted everyone. He wore casual clothes, jeans and a navy sweater, but even in yacht attire, he managed to look expensively polished. "Victoria," he said, approaching her with arms outstretched, as if nothing had changed between them. "You look beautiful." She stepped back, avoiding his embrace. "We need to talk, Theron, about the money." His smile faltered slightly. "What money?"
"The $2.7 million you transferred to Switzerland last week. The art collection you bought with my inheritance. The Monaco penthouse." Victoria's voice remained steady, but I could see her hands trembling slightly. Theron's expression shifted, the charm evaporating like morning fog. "You've been investigating me. I've been protecting myself. Something I should have done years ago. Victoria, you don't understand the pressure I've been under. The company was failing. Daniel was incompetent. Daniel's company is thriving now that you're gone. The only thing that was failing was your ability to steal enough money to maintain your lifestyle." For the first time since I'd known him, Theron looked genuinely desperate. "I can explain everything. We can work this out. Can we? Can you explain why you seduced Camille Sterling? Can you explain why you embezzled from your best friend? Can you explain why you've been moving our assets offshore for months while planning to abandon me?" Theron's mask finally slipped completely. "You want the truth, Victoria? Fine. I've been trapped in this marriage for 8 years, playing the role of grateful husband to your father's money. I built something real with Daniel's company, and what did I get? Treated like a junior partner by some small-town nobody who got lucky. So you decided to steal from everyone and run. I decided to take what I deserved and start over somewhere. People appreciate ambition instead of punishing it." Victoria pulled out her phone, and I knew it was my cue. I stepped out of the shadows, and Theron's face went white when he saw me. "Hello, partner," I said. "Interesting conversation you're having. Daniel, this isn't what it looks like. It looks like a confession to multiple felonies, which it is, because everything you just said was recorded." Detective Martinez emerged from behind another yacht, her badge clearly visible. "Theron Veyric, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering." As the handcuffs clicked around Theron's wrists, he looked at Victoria and me with pure hatred. "You think you've won something? You've destroyed a man with vision for what? Your precious middle-class morality." "We've stopped a thief," Victoria replied quietly. "There's a difference." The last thing I saw was Theron being led away to a police car, his expensive briefcase seized as evidence. The man who had systematically betrayed everyone who trusted him was finally facing consequences he couldn't charm or buy his way out of. As the police cars disappeared into the night, Victoria and I stood alone on the dock, both of us processing the end of relationships that had defined years of our lives. 6 months later, I received a letter from the Federal Correctional Facility in Pennsylvania, where Theron was serving his 15-year sentence for financial crimes. I never opened it. Some conversations are better left unfinished. Wold and Associates had not only survived Theron's betrayal, but flourished beyond anything I'd imagined possible. The recovered funds, combined with the insurance settlement from his crimes, allowed me to expand into 3 new markets and hire 12 additional employees. More importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts about people and partnerships. Victoria had used her settlement money to start a foundation supporting victims of financial fraud. We'd maintained a friendship built on mutual respect rather than shared trauma. She often said that Theron's betrayal had freed her from a marriage she'd outgrown years earlier, though she admitted it took months of therapy to fully believe that. Camille and I had coffee occasionally, our relationship settling into something comfortable and honest. She'd taken a position at the Ashton Bay Museum of Contemporary Art, finally pursuing her passion for art on her own terms, rather than through someone else's connections. The guilt over our relationship's end had faded, replaced by genuine friendship and mutual respect. "Do you know what the strangest part is?" she said during our last meeting, stirring sugar into her latte, while watching pedestrians walk by outside the cafe window. "I spent so much time wanting someone who could give me everything I thought I needed. But what I really needed was to discover what I could build for myself." I understood exactly what she meant. Theron's deception had forced all of us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Our insecurities, our desires, our willingness to compromise our values for the promise of something better. The engagement ring I'd planned to give Camille now sat in my office safe, not as a reminder of loss, but as a symbol of lessons learned. Love built on honest foundations might develop more slowly, but it lasted longer than relationships built on fantasy and manipulation. As I walked through downtown Ashton Bay that evening, past the restaurant where this story began, I realized that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they really are. Theron had done that for all of us, though certainly not intentionally. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen, the architect I'd been dating for the past 2 months. Nothing dramatic or earth-shaking, just an invitation to grab dinner and maybe catch the new exhibition at Camille's museum. Simple, honest, real. I texted back, "I'd love to. See you at 7. Some stories end with grand gestures and dramatic revelations. This one ended with the quiet satisfaction of building something authentic from the wreckage of beautiful lies. And for the first time in years, that felt like more than enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.